Hello, everyone. So we are live from Itoday Summit, live from Lausanne, Switzerland. So thank you for being part of this summit. We have an amazing guest who is with us in this conversation. So a few weeks ago, we were still searching for our perfect speaker to talk about ecology. We needed someone with a strong message, someone with a lot of experience, and someone, because right now in 2020, innovation has to be about sustainability. So it's very important. So our friends from Swiss newspaper Le Temps reached out to us and proposed to invite Mr. Paul Watson, the founder of Sea Shepherd and actually the co-founder of Greenpeace in the 70s. When I got the news, I was just speechless. And yeah, here it is. Paul is with us today. So thank you so much for being here. And today I'm proud to welcome also Cédric Garofet, who is a journalist at Le Temps and who will host this talk and introduce the legendary Captain Watson, the defender of the oceans.
Yes,
please welcome Cédric.
Thanks, Steph. Yeah, hi and welcome to you all. Le Temps hi today. I'm very pleased to offer you this special moment with Paul Watson. Paul Watson, you know him. He is one of the greatest environmental activists of our time. He is also the founder of the Seashepherd Conservation Society. And the commitment of this organization is defend, conserve, and protect marine wildlife. Paul, thank you very much for your participation, for this moment. It's your turn. Vous avez carte blanche, as we say in French.
Well, thank you very much.
So I think we would like to hear about your journey with Sea Shepherd and how we can take maybe inspiration as innovators.
Well, I established the Sea Shepherd Conservation Society in 1977. I had previously been a director with the Greenpeace Foundation, but I was very frustrated with the fact that Greenpeace was a protest organization. I thought we had to do more than that. So I set Sea Shepherd up as an interventionist group. We became an anti-poaching organization, and today we're an international anti-poaching movement. And our approach is something I developed in the 70s, which I call aggressive nonviolence. And we're quite proud of our record in that we've never caused an injury to anyone. We've never sustained any injuries, but we have shut down hundreds of illegal operations through that direct intervention. So today we have the largest non-government Navy on the planet. We have ships off of Africa, off Latin America, in the Mediterranean, in the Caribbean, intervening against poaching operations, and quite successfully. Right now, one of our most important campaigns is in the Vaquita refuge of the Sea of Cortez in Mexico, where we're working in partnership with the Mexican government to prevent the extinction of the Vaquita porpoise. And I'm quite confident that if it wasn't for our last 7 years in the refuge, that the Vaquita would now be extinct. We've confiscated over 1,200 illegal nets, and we've managed to keep the poachers out of the Vaquita refuge. It's been a difficult campaign. We got our drone shot down. We've been attacked numerous times, but we stood our ground on that. Just this week, we arrested 2 Chinese poaching vessels in the waters of Gabon. And so in the last year, about 52 of those 52 poachers have been arrested in African waters. What we did, we developed in the last few years is this system of partnerships with various governments where we provide the resources and the volunteers, and they provide the authority to intervene. And that's worked out quite well. This all began back in 2015 when we undertook the longest pursuit of a poacher in maritime history with the pursuit of the ice fish poacher Thunder from Antarctica to the coast of equatorial West Africa. And that was a 110-day pursuit, which ended up with the Thunder captain sinking his own ship. But what that did was put us into a partnership with Interpol and various governments that were involved. And now what I think we're taken very, very seriously by many of these governments is that we can get things done that a lot of governments can't, because we can cut through the red tape and directly intervene. The other thing I'm quite proud of is contrary to the reputation that a lot of people think that we have, we've never been convicted of a felony crime. We operate within the boundaries of the law, and we also operate within the boundaries of practicality. And right at the moment, we have about 100 volunteers on 9 different ships that are at sea. And Sea Shepherd evolved from an organization into what is now a movement, which is a good thing because you can stop an individual like myself, you can stop an organization, but you can't stop a movement. So I think that's a very healthy evolution. and we're getting stronger all the time and more and more successful. So I think the other thing that we're able to do is inspire people because people join our crew, and they get to understand that they can make a difference, that they shouldn't be deterred by criticism, that if you harness courage and imagination to passion, you can literally change the world. And it doesn't really matter how you do that, because the strength of an ecosystem is in diversity. Therefore, the strength of any movement has to be in diversity. So whether that approach is litigation or education or activism, it all points towards the same end. So what people need to do is simply use their abilities, their skills, and their experience, and harness that the best way they can to make this a better world, because we all have different different ideas, different approaches, and different talents. And that pretty much sums up, I think, what Sea Shepherd is today.
Amazing, amazing. Maybe can you tell us about just your beginnings at Sea Shepherd, and how it was kind of breaching the rules, and what can innovators do in 2020?
Well, I began as an activist when I was 11 years old, protecting beavers from traps in Eastern Canada. But when I was 18, I became the youngest founding member of the Greenpeace Foundation, and that was to oppose nuclear testing in Amchick Island, which, by the way, was a wildlife preserve, and that's always been my concern, is to protect wildlife. So when I left Greenpeace in 1977, it was to establish Sea Shepherd. But what I've seen over the last 50 years, of course, is the evolution of international conservation environmental movement. So we're stronger than ever. I mean, when I can, look at the way things were back in the 50s and 60s, we've come a long way, and there's a lot of people who are involved now, especially a lot of young people. And that's one of the things that we've tried to do with Sea Shepherd is to inspire young people that they can make a difference. And how that works is, for instance, back in 1981, I got a call from somebody in Scotland, and he said, well, they're killing gray seals up here in the Orkney Islands. What are you going to do about it? And I said, well, I don't know. I'm on the other side of the planet. The question is, what are you going to do about it? And he said, well, what can I do? And so we helped him put together a Sea Shepherd group. And again, they were very enthusiastic. They went up to the Orkneys and literally walked up to the guys shooting seals, pulled the rifles out of their hands and threw the rifles into the ocean, and got arrested, but got a lot of publicity. In fact, so much publicity that we raised the funds to buy that island, and that's now a seal sanctuary. So I think that the success in a movement is not only just having the audacity to advance what you want to do, but also a good understanding of the kind of culture that we live in, a media culture. And you have to understand how to utilize media to get your message across and to make a difference, and that's very important.
Amazing. So we are getting a lot of questions for you, actually, Paul. So question from a reader of Le Temps, from Grégoire. So is COVID a good thing for the ocean, the fishes? What do you think?
Well, I don't know if it's a good thing. I think on the negative side of it, poaching increases during epidemics. The Ebola problem off of Africa illustrated that poaching went up on the increase. On the positive side, worldwide fishing is down 10% overall, about 20% in Europe. But I don't, overall, it doesn't really make a difference. But here's the real problem with COVID, is that that's just the first of many pathogens which are going to emerge as a direct consequence of climate change and the destruction of biodiversity and habitats. We're going to be releasing new zoonotic transmissions of viruses because of that. When you destroy ecosystems, you create an imbalance where the viruses which are associated with various species, especially species which are being diminished or going extinct, need somewhere to go. And humans are a pretty, inviting host. I mean, there's 8 billion of us, so it's quite attractive. Most people don't really understand the role of viruses in the ecology. It's actually a good thing. Almost every species, plant and animal, has viruses associated with it, and they're beneficial generally. But the problem is when you reduce a species number or you diminish a habitat or an ecosystem, you create a situation where those viruses are going to jump to another species. And that's not really good for the new host species, because it has to develop a state of coexistence. The virus doesn't want to kill the species, but it takes some time for the host to adapt to that virus. And in the meantime, of course, a lot of hosts die as a result. I think we have to be aware of the fact that there's going to be more and more viruses emerging. We've had SARS, we've had MERS, we had West Nile fever, we've had hantavirus, and these have been relatively small compared to COVID, but there will be more that are worse than COVID. And plus on the fact, there's also the problem of the release of pathogens that have been lying dormant for 40, 50,000 years in the permafrost. And we have no understanding as to what the impact of that is going to be. So really what I'm saying is our diminishment of species, our diminishment of ecosystems is going to lead to more perilous problems that are going to face all of humanity. I've always said that the conservation environmental movement is not really about saving the planet. I mean, the planet's not going anywhere, but it's about humanity, saving humanity from ourselves, from our own arrogance and our own ignorance. And if we don't do that, we're just simply not going to survive.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. We have a question from Fabrice.
Yes.
Do you want to ask your question directly, Fabrice?
Yes. Very inspiring, and actually building on exactly what you were saying now. I'm interested, after your long career, if you compare now to when you started your career in activism, are you more pessimistic or optimistic about the future of humanity on our planet?
Well, I've never been optimistic or pessimistic. I learned a lesson many years ago. I was a medic during the occupation of Wounded Knee by the American Indian Movement. That was in 1973. And we were surrounded by 3,000 federal agents that were firing at us all night. They had wounded 46, killed 2. And I went to Russell Means, who was the leader of the American Indian Movement, and I said, we don't have any hope of winning here. We're vastly outnumbered. The odds are against us. So why are we here? And his answer has stayed with me all my life. He said, well, we're not concerned about the odds against us. We're not concerned about winning or losing. We're here because this is the right place to be, the right thing to do, and the right time to do it. Concentrate on what you're doing in the present, and that will define what the future will be. Don't worry about the future. Concentrate now, and that will make the difference. We don't know what the future is going to be, but we can control, and we can't control it, but we can control what we do today. So everything we do today will have consequences. Now, sometimes when people say it's a little overwhelming, they say, well, it's impossible to find a solution. I mean, the problems are so difficult to overcome. My answer to that is that if you want to solve an impossible problem, you need to find the impossible solution. And a good example of that, 1972, the very idea that Nelson Mandela would be president of South Africa was unthinkable and therefore impossible, but yet that became possible. So I think that all these problems are solvable through a combination of passion, imagination, and courage. And also, don't depend upon governments to solve any problems. They never have, they never will. Usually governments cause problems, they don't solve problems. So we really have to look to the passion, the courage, and the imagination of individuals or groups of individuals around the world. That's every social revolution in the history of humanity has been carried out in that way, not by governments. Slavery wasn't ended in the US by Abraham Lincoln. It was ended by people like Wilberforce and Douglass. Women didn't get the right to vote because of President Wilson. They got the right to vote because of the suffering and the sacrifices of the suffragettes, and the same with the civil rights movement, and on and on and on. So, all change comes from ourselves, not from the outside.
Great, amazing. We have a great question actually from Berhad.
Hi, Paul. Amazing to have you here. I'm enjoying every word that I'm hearing. I have a question that if you had enough power as the President of the United States, what primary action would you take to combat climate change?
Well, the problem, of course, is if we had enough power to be president of the United States, you wouldn't be able to do anything, because anybody becomes a world leader, especially the president of the United States, is so indebted to the corporations and the powers that be that they're never going to accomplish anything anyway. So you really can't see any change coming from that. What we really need is a revolution in our culture. The real problem is anthropocentrism. The entire human species is anthropocentric, which means we only care about ourselves. We're completely alienated from the natural world. We don't understand that if phytoplankton disappears in the ocean tomorrow, we all go extinct. We're totally dependent upon it. That's why I say if the ocean dies, we all die. You know, we have to understand that if we don't learn to live in harmony with all other species, plants and animals, then we're not going to survive ourselves, because there are three basic laws of ecology. The law of diversity, that the strength of an ecosystem depends upon diversity within it. The law of interdependence, that although those species are interdependent with each other. And the law of finite resources, that there's a limit to growth, a limit to carrying capacity. And what our species we're doing is we're stealing the carrying capacity from other species. And as their numbers diminish, so does that diminish diversity and interdependence. So if we don't adapt a biocentric point of view, which by the way is the mindset of most indigenous cultures, then we're not going to survive. The good example of our anthropocentric point of view is that almost all the world's religions put human beings at the center. Which we're proclaiming ourselves as the only important living thing upon this planet. And I think that's where, if we don't change that attitude, then we're not going to have much of a future. You know, what is the world going to be like? If you're an environmentalist or a conservationist, you have to think of what's the world going to be like in 1,000 years, 1,000,000 years from now, because everything we do right now will define what it's going to be. You know, the planet will be here, but the question is, will we be here 1,000 years from now? And that can only be determined by our actions right now in the present.
Amazing. We have a question from Le Temps, and the question is from Caroline. Caroline, sorry. Is it possible to be a militant activist without doing any act of violence?
Well, that's why I developed this concept of aggressive nonviolence, being aggressive, but at the same time being nonviolent. And we've never injured anybody. There's a perception that we're violent, but that's because anybody who stands up to protect the environment is going to be perceived as being violent because of whatever definition of violence is. Violence is opposing the status quo in the minds of mainstream media and mainstream governments. Here's a good example. Imagine walking into the city of Mecca and spitting on the black stone. While your chances of getting out of the city alive are somewhat remote, you're going to be torn to pieces for your act of blasphemy. Or walk into Jerusalem and take a pickaxe to the Wailing Wall. You're not going to get very far before you get an Israeli soldier's bullet in the back. And nobody's going to have any sympathy for you because you attack something which is sacred. Yet every day we go into the most beautiful, the most sacred cathedrals of the natural world, the rainforests of Amazonia, the Great Barrier Reef off of Australia, and we totally desecrate these cathedrals with bulldozers and mining and all the logging operations and everything, and nobody really stands up to defend them. I mean, if the rainforests, if the coral reefs were as sacred to us as an old wall in Jerusalem or a piece of meteorite in Mecca, we would literally rise up and defend them. But we don't do that because, again, we're anthropocentrically oriented. We only value things which are human-oriented. Another good example is a few years ago, a ranger in Zimbabwe shot and killed a poacher who was about to kill a black rhinoceros, and human rights groups all over the world condemned him for doing this. How dare you kill a human being to protect an animal? And his answer to that, I think, really illustrated our hypocrisy. He said, you know, if I was a police officer in Harare and a man ran out of Barclays Bank with a bag of money and I shot him in the head in the street and killed him right there, you'd pin a medal on me and call me a hero. So how is it that a bag of paper has more value than the future heritage of this nation?
Amazing. We have a question from Le Temps, from Axel, actually. And the question is how digital pirates can help traditional pirates like you in the mission.
Well, of course, we're living in modern technology with modern media and everything. So, of course, there's a lot that can be accomplished in that way. The key, I think, to success always has been understanding and controlling media. When we developed Greenpeace in the beginning, it was because we were the first organization to really understand the power of media. We were listening to the teachings of Marshall McLuhan back then, and the media is the message. With modern media, as it develops and evolves, you have, learning how to utilize that media and put it at the service of any movement is absolutely essential. And it's like you don't evolve with that media, then you're not going to survive. So yes, there's a lot that can be accomplished through that understanding. Here's a good example, of how the evolution of media works. Back in the 1950s or 60s, if you wanted to get your point across, it usually took 5 or 10 minutes on television. Commercials lasted a lot longer because people had to take the time to do it. But now it's evolved where everything gets down to very, a lot of information, very little time. So just 3 days ago, I think, or 2 days ago at the Democratic Convention, AOC was speaking, and she was only given 90 seconds. But she said more in that 90 seconds than the older politicians said in like 25, 30 minutes, because she's able to adapt and understand how to utilize that modern media, TikTok, whatever, and everything. And so that's very important that people learn to develop those ways of manipulating and using the strategies of evolving media.
Yeah. Actually, what happened the other day with Trump, with the meeting of Trump, kind of hacked by TikTok users. So we have a question here from Sabrina. If you want to ask it live.
Sure, would be great. Hi, Paul. It's really impressive to listen to you. I would like to know how can we empower teenagers to help us, or to help us to save the planet and the oceans? What would you tell them?
I don't think we have to empower teenagers at all. I think teenagers are doing a good job empowering themselves. I think that young people should be free to develop their own movement, their own way of doing things, and that's happening. It's happening very well. Everybody from Greta Thunberg to others, who are just making a difference. I'm seeing more and more involvement than, say, 20, 30 years ago in that respect. One of our big problems, I think, traditionally has been, I get this question all the time. What do we teach our children? And my answer is always, we don't teach them anything. Just listen to them. I mean, they intuitively understand the world, and we remove that intuition. We remove their imagination. We teach them how to be conformists. I always had as an example, back in the 70s, I had the opportunity to speak at a school at the Haida Indian Reservation up in Canada, in British Columbia. And we began with kindergarten, then middle school, and then the seniors. And so the kindergarten kids, I said to them, how many of you kids speak the Haida language? They all did. How many of you know anything about whales? We didn't have to say anything. We just listened to them talk about whales. By middle school, half of them spoke the language, half of them were interested. By the time we got to the seniors, nobody spoke the language and nobody cared about whales. So what we had done is taken all these beautiful, intelligent children and turned them into complete morons through the educational system. I think that our educational systems really should be encouraging children's imagination and their intuition, and having them come up with their own answers. We don't have the answers, obviously, because our generation certainly have failed in that respect. But the one thing that the present young generation now has that we didn't have is a situation where they don't know their future. What is the future going to be? What's it going to be like 10 years, 20 years from now, and everything? That's very uncertain. At least, during the 50s, 60s, 70s, we lived in probably the most materialistically advantageous and free cultures there were, that probably ever was and ever will be. And things have changed a lot, and certainly not for the better.
We have a question from Le Temps, from Edouard. It's a tricky one. So how would you describe your relationship with Greenpeace currently? And do you guys are in sync? Do you share any information or any plans?
Well, we're completely different. I mean, Greenpeace is a protest organization. Sea Shepherd's an interventionist organization. Greenpeace is an environmental organization. We're a marine conservation, anti-poaching organization. So we're two completely different things. All the original people from Greenpeace are no longer with Greenpeace. In fact, many of them are with Sea Shepherd. So things changed. When I left Greenpeace, it was for many reasons, but one of the main reasons was that I'm not very big on protesting, and so that I thought that it was a very submissive position to be in. But our relationship with Greenpeace today is, well, there is no relationship, but that's fine because we have room in this movement for literally thousands of organizations, and the real strength of the conservation environmental movement lies in grassroots groups, small groups all over the world addressing issues in their local ecosystems. That's where the real strength is. These big, large organizations, don't do as much as collectively as all those small groups. That's one of the reasons Sea Shepherd has stayed small. We don't do direct mail. We're not out on the street asking for money. We're not doing telephone solicitations. Our budget is a fraction of what Greenpeace's budget is, because we've always felt that we should put our emphasis on volunteerism and not developing a large bureaucracy, which we don't have. And we want to keep it that way.
Amazing. We have a question from Axel. Maybe you want to turn your mic?
Sure. Hi, Paul. It's great hearing you, and thanks for being here. So Itoday is an innovation conference, and my question is how innovation shall serve your mission, and do you think sustainability in general must be hacked?
Well, sustainability that's a word that was invented by Gro Harlem Brundtland, the Prime Minister of Norway, during the 1990 or the 92 conference in Rio de Janeiro. And basically what it means today is business as usual under another name. There is no sustainability. There's no such thing as a sustainable fisheries, no such thing as sustainable logging. So we can't hide behind that word for very much longer. We have to really develop some real revolutionary ways of viewing how we live in relationship to the planet. And but as long as we're destroying other species and destroying ecosystems and everything, then that's not going to happen. We have to find alternative energies. So we have to find ways of voluntarily reducing human populations and taking care of people as well. Because the problem is that we're not just abusing ecosystems, we're also abusing each other. And all of that's being caused by the decline in diversity and interdependence.
Thank you. So we have a question from Le Temps, from Graziella. How are you perceived by Western countries, Russia, Japan, the US? So we know that Fred has hosted you for several years. So can you tell a bit about your relationship with countries?
Well, Sea Shepherd's developed probably the first NGO to really develop partnerships with various governments. It started in 1999 with our partnership with the Galapagos and the government of Ecuador. And now we are in partnership with numerous African countries, Tanzania, Namibia, Gabon, Liberia, São Tomé, Cape Verde, and Gambia, and also in Latin America with Colombia, Peru, and Ecuador, and Mexico. And this is working out really quite well because they give us the authority, we give them the resources. Last year we took 40 tons of marine debris off of Costa Rica's Cocos Island. This year we're working with Mexico and with the African countries to stop poaching. We have a team every year goes up to Northern Australia to work with the Aboriginal community up there to remove the debris from the turtle beaches and that. So I think it's good to develop those partnerships where and when we can, because one thing that we can do that governments can't do is we're not bogged down by red tape. People have called us pirates over the years, but I can say one thing about pirates: pirates get things done. They cut right through the bureaucracy, and that's what we're able to do.
Amazing. That's a personal question. Do you speak any French?
Un très peu seulement avec l'accent américain.
Good. So we have a question from reader from Le Temps, Tibus, and the question is: what is the best result of all your fights? The one that you are the most proud of? Well,
I think the one thing I'm most proud of is the fact that we turned Sea Shepherd, an organization, into an international movement. That it isn't dependent upon myself as being like the leader of this, that we have literally hundreds of leaders and captains and officers and directors all taking the initiative. And it's through that kind of thing that I think that's made us as strong as we possibly can be. So making an international movement to me is the thing I'm most proud of. Of course, we're also proud of the fact that we drove the ice fish poachers out of the Southern Ocean. We drove the Japanese whaling fleet out of the Southern Ocean. And we're making progress on many, many fronts. And the fact that the vaquita porpoise has not gone extinct is something we're really quite proud of.
Great. We have a question from Betty Bly from Le Temps. So I am an activist it's very difficult for me to participate in action that save animals because I see that animals are in pain. So how do you react when you see animals dying in front of you? Do you accept that?
I think you have to be detached. That is, you just can't allow your emotions to take over on that. You have to be like a doctor. One of my crew members was actually, he is an emergency room surgeon, and one of the best in the hospitals. And somebody asked him, well, what's your secret for being the best emergency surgeon in the hospital? He says, I don't like people. And they said, well, why is that? He says, because I don't get emotionally involved. And therefore, I have a greater success rate. It's like fixing a car, really. So in a way, you have to be like that. You have to go to not be distracted by the fact that this whale is dying or the seal is being killed, and focus on the objective, which is to stop the operation and not be sidetracked. It's difficult, but it's the only way I think that you can successfully intervene.
There's a very practical question from Emmanuel.
Hello. I wanted to know, what do you want us to do after this summit? What do you want to leave us with after this session? What is important to you for us to do next?
Well, of course, I don't want anybody to do anything, really. It's really it's your initiative. Is what do you want to do? What do you want to accomplish? What can you use your skills and ability to make a difference? Because everybody has different passions, and when you apply yourself to that passion, that's what makes a difference. Because of a man named David Wingate, the storm petrel in Bermuda did not go extinct. Because of Diane Fossey, we still have mountain gorillas in Rwanda. So when one person devotes their life to preventing the extinction of a species or protecting an ecosystem, I can't think of a more noble legacy that anybody can leave to the world than that. And so really the question is, what do you want to do, and how can you apply yourself to making that a possibility?
We have a question from Jan. Are you here?
Yeah, I'm here. Hi, guys. Thanks, Paul, for joining us. I was hoping to see you with an eye patch and a parrot. But I can tell you that myself and the rest of my family are a big fan of what your organization is doing. And I have questions regarding how you tackle the problems that you want to solve. So as an organization, how do you choose and prioritize the problem that the organization will tackle? And how do you approach the solution to that problem?
Well, like I said, we're no longer an organization, we're a movement. And so therefore the projects are actually selected by the various peoples on the various fronts. For instance, Sea Shepherd in France, Lamia Samlami is the director for Sea Shepherd France, and she looks at what can be done within the bounds of practicality, really. So we're trying to stop turtle poachers on the island of Mayotte. We're trying to stop the killing of dolphins in the Bay of Biscay. All of these different things. So really, those projects are actually chosen by the people in the various areas of the world, whether it be Australia or South Africa or Costa Rica or wherever. People look at what the problems are in their own backyards and choose that. And then, of course, our ships, which are directed towards international campaigns, come at request. So if it were requested to intervene in Liberia, for example, then we do so. So a lot of times it comes from requests, and a lot of times it's looking at, well, okay, what is the problem, and is it practical for us to intervene? I mean, can we actually accomplish something by intervening? And of course, that goes a long ways towards us taking action. And we get a lot of calls about, what are you going to do about this, or what are you going to do about that? Like, for instance, I got a call the other day, what are you going to do about the oil spill in Mauritius? Well, not much, because we do have people there, but what can you do? It was an act of incredible stupidity that had happened. And what we have been doing over the years is going to the beaches and cleaning up oil spills and everything, and always giving this warning over and over again that, something's got to be done. And of course, nobody listens. The other day, one of the directors, politicians, I think, from Mauritius said, we couldn't imagine anything like this ever happening. And I'm going, why not? It's happened in France, it's happened in Alaska, it happens all the time. So why are you now just getting around to saying we can't imagine it? What you have to imagine is, what can we do to make it not happen in the future? That's what they have to do. But again, our species tends to adapt to things, always too little. It's always too little, it's too late. And we have to start looking forward into saying, how are we going to solve these problems before they actually happen? And unfortunately, we're not very good at that. And we don't seem to be very good at learning from history either, all the problems that we've had. I mean, we adapt constantly to diminishment. As things become more and more diminished, we just accept that. A species disappeared, oh, well, that's fine. Who needs it? That's kind of the attitude. If this is 1965 and I were to say to you, in 40 years, you're going to be buying water in plastic bottles and you're going to be paying more for that water than the equivalent amount of petrol or gasoline. You look at me like, who's going to be so stupid as to buy water and pay that much money for it? But we've adapted to the diminishment and now nobody even questions that reality. So we have to stop that adaptation to diminishment, which actually served us quite well 20,000, 30,000 years ago, but it certainly isn't of a benefit today.
Great. We have a question from Nadej from Le Temps, and very practical too. What are the needs of sea shepherds today?
Well, actually, I would say we don't really, we have what we need. And we're evolving where we can. So if we add another ship to the fleet, that's great. We have a lot of volunteers. And in fact, we used to be in the early days hard to get volunteers. Now the hard part is turning people away because we don't have room. But getting the support for our operations, of course, is certainly important. But we're not going to spend money to go after more money. So what we like to say is we don't go after supporters. We want our supporters to come to us because they have to understand that we're a tool in solving the problem. But we don't want to exploit the situation and develop a bureaucracy, and we're not going to do that. But people can get involved with Sea Shepherd on many levels: volunteering on the ships, volunteering on shore, or just being a financial supporter.
Great. Mathieu, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Paul. It's really great to, I would say, imitating you. I was just trying to make the link with the corporate innovation, and especially what you said that you turn Sea Shepherd organization into a movement. So what are the key elements or key milestones that you did to be able to transform your organization into a movement?
Well, actually, I would say that I would credit the Japanese for us being a movement, because back in 2012, Japan came after us as an organization. They put me on the Interpol Red List, trying to take me out personally. They sued Sea Shepherd in the United States. And we decided, that we're very weak or vulnerable in this area. So we decided that we would become an international movement. All the groups are separate entities, because you can stop an individual, you can stop an organization, you can't stop a movement. So yeah, Japan was able to stop us in the United States through the courts. Eventually we won, but they were able to stop us, but they couldn't stop Sea Shepherd Australia, they couldn't stop France, they couldn't stop the UK, couldn't stop Germany. So that is the real strength of a movement. That it's pretty hard to dismantle it. The perception by Japan that I was actually the leader of this and that all they had to do was take me out, they certainly learned that wasn't true. I'm not the leader. There are many leaders. And again, that's an area of strength that we developed. But it was probably because of that attack by Japan that we moved in that direction, which was a good thing. So I look at Japan's assault on us as a positive. It was a positive development.
Yeah, positive. Which quality? So it's from Le Temps, from Lawrence. Which quality of the human being will produce our future?
Well, as I had mentioned earlier, passion, courage, and imagination. People need to harness their passion to their courage and to their imagination. And that is what changes the world and has always done so. And in every single social movement in history, really. And so, yeah, that's all that's really needed. It's quite simple. It's through those three virtues.
I have a final personal question. You are a very busy man, and thank you so much for spending time with us. Why did you choose to come during Itoday Summit and to talk to innovators?
Well, I think because you invited me.
I do, but I assume that a lot of people are inviting you.
Well, I try to speak to anybody who's interested in having me speak. But also at the same time, it's good to encourage people to understand that no matter what your skills are, no matter what you're involved in, there's room to make a contribution towards a better future. And so I think that we always should look for that. If you're an educator, if you're a lawyer, if you're a writer, if you're involved with IT or whatever, that there's always ways that you can contribute to making this a better planet. And so in that way, I'm sort of encouraging, that kind of outlook.
Great. Last question from Le Temps. What do you think will be your legacy after all these actions? What will stay in history?
It doesn't really matter, except that I think that the creation of Sea Shepherd as a movement, I think will live long after I will. So never really gave much thought about that, other than the fact that Sea Shepherd is a movement and it's a growing movement.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time, Paul. I think Cedric has something to say.
Yes, thanks to all viewers for the participation. Paul, thank you very much for this moment. Do you want to add something to conclude before we finish, Paul?
To have what, sorry?
Do you want to add something to conclude before we finish?
To conclude. Other than that, at the United Nations Conference on the Environment in Paris, I was invited to speak about the oceans because it was pretty much ignored at the time. And, someone said, well, to go to an earlier question, are you ever pessimistic about it? And I said, well, no, because, if you look at the history of major extinction events on this planet, and we're now involved in the 6th major extinction event, which is called the Anthropocene. What did all of those major extinction events have in common? Well, whether it be the Permian extinction 250 million years ago or the Jurassic extinction 65 million years ago, what they had in common was in 18 to 20 million years, it was a full recovery. So no matter what we do right now, 18 to 20 million years from now, this is still going to be a very beautiful planet. The question is, how long are we going to survive on it? And so that's why I say, if we're going to have a future, then we have to be activists. We have to be involved. But don't pretend that we're saving the planet. The planet's going to do real good without us, probably much better. And again, we have to understand that we're not all that important. I was taken to task a few years ago in the US on the Fox network, really, because they said that, did you actually say that bees and fish and worms and plankton were more important than people? I said, yes, I said that. And they said, how can you say something so outrageous as to say that worms and bees and trees and fish are more important than people? I said, well, it's quite simple, because they're more important than people. I mean, ecologically, they are. They can survive without us, but we can't survive without them. We need them. They don't need us. They're the crew members that run the life support system on this planet. We're not crew members, we're passengers. We're having a great time entertaining ourselves, but we're not crew members. But what we are doing is we're killing crew members. And there's only so many crew members you can kill before the machinery begins to fall apart. So if we're going to survive on Spaceship Earth, we've got to stop killing crew members and let them get on with the work of maintaining the life support system on the planet.
Thank you so much, Paul. Thank you so much. So inspiring.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Itoday.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. You can unmute yourself and clap, please. Captain Paul Watson. So we're gonna have a short break, 15 minutes break, and and then we're gonna welcome Mr. Surya Vanka. Stay tuned.